What's good, everybody? You know what time it is? It is time for Elevated Vibes right here on IntellectualRadio.com, a iHeart radio station. Now, check it out. To join this conversation, you can hit us up on the line 708-223-8953, or you can hit us up on Facebook Live. All right, folks, check it out. I got a question for y'all. Tell me. How can six people in their ideology, excuse me, y'all, come over and judge and guide at least pretty much 50% of this country? If y'all don't know what I'm talking about the six justices who destroyed affirmative action within college right now, but that's just a opening for a whole pile of other mess. All right, so let's talk about it. I got my boy here, Mr. Timothy Evans.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Brother.
Happy to be here.
You know the deal. Make it happen, man. Talk to me.
So, the Supreme Court and affirmative action. I think that it's been a long time coming. They've been wanting to destroy affirmative action since it was created.
For the most part, I mean, I know the one Justice John Roberts, if I'm saying his name correctly, I know he spoke about it back in the 80s, cutting it down, destroying it, and so forth. You know, and he finally got his opportunity with what the court is now. So it has been a very long time they've been trying to get at it, you know. So I'm going to let you go ahead, though, bro.
So I think that what happened was they were just waiting for all the pieces to fall in part. They were waiting for, well, I should say all the pieces to fall in place. I'm sorry. So I think that the election of President Trump, who gave them 3 Supreme Court justices, and the fact that they had a front man in Clarence Thomas to put out there, you know, doing it to your own.
Yeah.
You know, they put him front and center.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of those together, it created the perfect opportunity for them to reverse the affirmative action. Yeah.
And you know the funny thing about Clarence Thomas, which, you know, I found out that he is from the Geechee group out there in South Carolina, a group that, you know, even though they kept a lot of their own identity, they caught it. So being through what he been through, it's very surprising that, you know, even though I know, but still, I mean, you have to have something of your, in my book, your childhood, your upbringing still in you, even though you've aged and, you know, well, you would hope that you gain a little wisdom. In his case, I doubt it. But, you know, you would hope you would, you know, gain a little wisdom and so forth. But you would keep some of that, you know, remembrance. And for a guy like that to just throw it out the window so he can, you know, rub shoulders with his buddies and I guess take more trips with him and his wife and his nephew, that's something.
Well, okay, so I did a little research on Clarence there, right? All right, so according to a book that was written about Clarence Thomas, he had some financial difficulties.
Correct.
He had finance, and he was an alcoholic. It's something I didn't know. And that was something that was collaborated by his first wife.
Okay.
So if you take those two things, very bad with money. I heard he was in danger of eviction, bad credit. He had all kinds of financial issues, right?
Well, that lets you know how that Republican financier pretty much owns them. But go ahead.
Exactly. So my question would be, if he was in that kind of situation, he was an alcoholic, financial difficulties. how could he be on the short list of anybody? How can he be on anybody's list to become a candidate for the Supreme Court, unless they picked him because of that?
More than likely, yeah, you picked him because of that. And, you talk about back in the days of Reagan, because he's the one that threw him in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, you pick him because of that. And then also because, even though he's our skin folk, but we all realize he ain't our kinfolk.
Right.
Uh, you know, just because of that. But at that time, people would just see it like, oh yes, and he replaced, Thurgood Marshall after he passed away.
Mhm.
So you kind of kept a group of the people happy, but they didn't know the truth. Even though, if I remember correctly, the lady that was almost stopped his ascension to the Supreme Court, I want to say her name was Anita Hill, if I'm correct. Do you remember? I think it was her name. That was her name. But you know, um, a lot of people should have listened to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they did, we would not be in the situation we are in right now.
Well, as I remember, the vote that got him put into the Supreme Court, it was almost 50-50. He barely got in
Right.
because he had so many problems and issues.
Right.
You know. And I think the ability to control the way the Supreme Court judges vote, that's like baked into the decision of how to pick them, right? So how about that last guy that got the last Supreme Court justice, um, Kavanaugh?
What about him?
All the issues that he had.
Right. Well,
You know.
they hurried to push them through.
Mhm.
To get what they have right now. Because not only have you destroyed, affirmative action, but
Mhm.
the hopes of a lot of people paying back their student loans, or at least getting, some of that debt off them and keep building our society, they also destroyed that as well. So that's gone too. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But, they got this push to get what they want,
Mhm.
And from what I see and so forth, we have to push back in different ways.
Mhm.
You understand? Um, and on a hypothetical sense, and I know some people have talked about this, we must do things such as, okay, they don't want to give us the affirmative action, let's just say getting to Penn State,
Mhm.
you know. Well, then, okay, you can't get into Penn State, but do they have the same programs and so forth at Grambling or Morehouse or Wilberforce? If any of those, historically black colleges, well, then that's something that, a lot of people need to look into,
Right.
you know.
And that was like the basis of the the affirmative action is to correct wrongs in the past, to help us to sort of catch up, to sort of even out
The playing
you're
field.
right, the
Yes.
playing field.
Right.
And even though it wasn't perfect, because I believe that uh, the group that mostly took advantage of affirmative action was actually white women.
Oh, didn't know that.
Oh yeah, yeah, because women, they fall under
Right.
the
No,
affirmative
yeah,
action,
yeah, of course.
but they are the group that mostly benefited from, ironically, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, it was supposed to be for, people who were, were oppressed and kept down in the past, and I wouldn't consider them in that category, actually. You know what I mean? Even though women as a class has been historically, been suppressed in our society. But you know this this is um, this is kind of the issue, right? It's saying that um, the Supreme Court, um, they have Well,
Go ahead.
let me try to reframe my thought.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's kind of a reflection of our society. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a reflection of our society that we can even get a person like Clarence Thomas Kavanaugh and someone like the end that can be controlled that way without much pushback. So I think it says a lot about the American society in that case. You know?
Well, yeah, I do believe, they need to do instead of appointments and so forth, they need to go to something where, you elect this judge or these judges get elected on the fact that, as long as they constantly appointing judges to the Supreme Court, you constantly appointing them, somebody is able to control them. All right. They're not looking at, because if I'm correct, and anybody, you can give a call to the number 708-223-8953 or hit us up on Facebook Live to correct me. But if I'm correct, the Supreme Court judges are supposed to look at the laws through an objective lens.
Right.
And the thing is, and we're going to go both ways, Republican or Democrat. If those are your feelings or those are the way that you go, you're not fully looking at it through an objective lens. And there are independent people out there, independent judges or whatever. So something like that, these judges need to be elected instead of just, I picked this guy, I picked this woman, and so forth. No, they need to be elected by the people.
At the least, they should definitely have some oversight from Congress. If it's supposed to be three equal branches of government, I think that the Congress should have the ability to maybe not easily impeach somebody who is very corrupt, but to get them in a situation where they are restrained if they are unable or unwilling to restrain themselves. Right. So like Roberts, Congress has asked him to come up with a group of rules and regulations that they will follow in terms of taking gifts, in terms of accepting monetary compensation,
Yes.
all of that stuff, right? And Roberts, he just refused, but he has Congress seems like they have no recourse. They can't do anything about it. It's like he owns this, and they're gonna do exactly. I'm gonna do exactly what I want to do.
Right.
You can't do anything about that.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm saying also too. Since Congress won't touch them in the way that they need to be touched, because I'm sorry, some of these people need to be recalled, aka Clarence Thomas and maybe a couple others. But since Congress won't do it, then they need to turn around and elect these judges so that the people can do it. All right. Now, should there be an election every 4 years for a judge? Hey, that's not for me to decide.
Right.
But if you give more power to the people to do that, then these judges can be checked. Because right now you had 6 judges that's checking everybody else in the country.
Yeah.
And just the math on that doesn't seem right.
Right.
If we're supposed to be a free and fair society, where is any of that there? Where is the fairness? Where is the freedom?
Well, yeah, there is none. You got 6 judges deciding for everybody how they want to interpret the Constitution, right?
Right.
And
just to let y'all know, we do know it's 9 justices on the Supreme Court.
We're just talking about the conservatives right now, right? Okay. So yeah, those six judges on the Supreme Court are dictating how they want and how they interpret the Constitution. So I was thinking, when they gave Biden the option of expanding the Supreme Court, what do you think about that? That might be an easier way to change the Supreme Court's makeup without actually going through Congress. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it would be personally, I see it as a band-aid right now. Yes, I do see that. But the thing is, it still falls back to okay, you know, this president's going to put this judge in this seat, and this judge in this seat, which is not completely this judge. These judges are not looking for the whole of America because that's what they're supposed to do,
Hmm.
not just one section.
Hmm.
You know, the whole of America, and they're not doing that. So if they're more elected by the people, then that possibility can come. And
Right.
we all know that, especially with our, even though it's more than a two-party system, but our two-party system, because we all know that all that's ever thrown out there is the Republicans and the Democrats.
Hmm.
But with our two-party system, it will still kind of fall into the same thing, but not as hard,
Right. Right.
you know. So would that be helpful to answer your question? Yes. You
Hmm.
know, will that be helpful enough to make things more fair? I don't think so.
No, it probably won't.
Right,
It probably won't.
right.
Because you have the next president come along, and you put in four more judges, and then the next president he'll put in five more judges, so he could have the court leaning in the conservative way.
Right. I
You
mean,
know,
yeah, it's still a slippery slope.
right? They'll
You
be going
know,
back and forth, definitely.
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, they do have the lifetime appointment and so forth, but still you had a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And that's why it should be something of a recall if that can be done. It should be something of a recall of a judge and so forth, especially dealing with, even if Clarence Thomas, e- okay, even before this judgment,
Hmm.
some of the scandals with Clarence Thomas was coming out. All right, with this Republican donor and so forth, that should have been a red flag right there.
Hmm.
You know, coming with this judgment that they came with, it should have been postponed or whatever till that had gotten settled. And they did not do that. And they pretty much swept it on the rug and, hey, let's keep going. Which, I mean, you can't constantly do that because you see this man is being under some type of control.
Yeah.
And, we can go and say, because, you hear all the conspiracy stories and so forth, which I'm not going to get into, but we could speak on that and say, oh, well, it's a lot of dark control and dark money within Washington and so forth. We know all this, but we don't want to make these moves to fix it.
Yeah.
And you want to stay by the laws of when the country was first born, okay?
Right. Right.
And time has changed. People have changed. We as people all know what is right and what is wrong, what is fair and what is not fair.
Hmm.
So we all as people need to put some time in to make the suggested changes that are needed.
Hmm.
So that's one of the biggest things that I see right now with the Supreme Court that we need to do to make these changes, because you can fall into other things that they have from their judgments that you know it's it's kind of crazy in my book.
Yeah. 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 And you're right. They kind of make bad decisions and fall back on the fact that they want to stay within the Constitution. That's like their fallback
Well, they make
position.
they
You
make
know.
that guys that disguise that they're falling within the Constitution, because one of the things that was said even with affirmative action, that it was supposed to last only until our society is fair to all people.
Hmm.
And we all know they can make the excuse and say, "Oh, it is." No, it's not. That's the excuse they're making. That things are more fair. No, we all know it's really not.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's why some of these changes have to be made. So some of these excuses that when they do this, I'll be nice and just say BS.
Hmm.
Then they can be checked on what they're doing.
Right. Right. Now, have you heard of constitutional scholars?
No, talk to me about it.
So, constitutional scholars are the people who teach the lawyers about the Constitution. They are experts on the Constitution of the United States.
Mm.
Now, if you have the Supreme Court making wild decisions, I would be in favor of like the people who actually teach the Constitution to actually be the judge of if they're trying to follow the Constitution in their judgments.
So you're talking about some of them being their actual checks and balances for the Supreme Court.
Right. Just like the voters would be a check and balance for Congress.
Agreed.
Right. Because at this point, the Supreme Court has no checks and balances. Once the president says that you're in there and you get voted in, you're in there for life. If you had, a group of professors or judges that are professional at interpreting the Constitution, then I think you might have a situation where you can get somebody out of there if they're really not following it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, okay. Well, on a couple other things that they've done, and to throw it out to everybody else, another thing that they did, and I kind of mentioned it before, President Biden had put a stop on the student loan debts. All right. On the fact that, so many people are under so much weight because of these student loan debts that they're not, putting as much money within the country, within the economy that they probably could. And some of the debts are so ridiculously high that they're never really paid off.
Right.
And they know that. But because whatever reason, again, the Supreme Court decided, hey, we're going to kill this too, And then another thing, the Supreme Court sided with a website designer who would not design a website promoting homosexuality. And then the fourth thing, if I remember correctly, was a gentleman he's a devout Christian, and he was working for the post office. And he had a case going on because they was making him work on Sunday. So that was their, I think that was all on their docket, if I'm correct. So what do you think about some of those other judgments?
Well, let me start with the last one first. Okay. So I'm not a real big favor of, I'm not in favor of people taking jobs that they can't work. You know what I mean? I understand, people, they have religious beliefs. But say you work at a Walgreens and your religious belief is that you can't sell medication to people. You know what I mean? Because you believe that, God is going to take care of you. Natural, right.
Type of deal.
You shouldn't have that Walgreens job. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that the same.
Because they sign your paychecks.
Right. Now, I believe, if the post office want to work with you in that situation, if they want to work with you and change your schedule, which is very easy at the post office pretty much, especially on Sunday. But it's pretty easy. If they want to work with you, that's fine. But if your days off are Monday, Tuesday, you can't change it. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to do something else. You're gonna have to I don't know.
But with the post office, could you not permanently switch your days? Because is that not something this man had done? Because that would have made more sense in my book instead of taking this all the way to the Supreme Court.
I mean, if a position is open, you can get your days changed.
Okay.
Or you can ask for a temporary,
change until something probably opens up.
Like everybody else does,
Okay.
When I was in school, I was working and I was going to school, and I had certain days that I went to school all day, and I got my schedule temporarily changed. Okay. I asked.
Right.
Sometimes they say yeah, and other times they're like, well, we can't do it.
Right.
So you have to schedule appropriately, around them. You
Mhm.
know, um, yeah, I don't know. I don't see that. I don't even think that should have went up to the Supreme
I
Court. You
mean,
know what I mean?
personally, I don't either because it should have been something that you probably could have worked out in some type of a way that it didn't even have to get to that point. Maybe I'm wrong,
Right, right.
but to me, I question that.
Yeah.
Any of y'all with any thoughts on that? You know the deal. Give a call to the number 708-223-8953 or hit us up on Facebook Live. All right, bro. What about some of the other judgments, like the website designer?
Um, the website designer.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a tough one. So he didn't want to make a website for a gay couple or a
Yeah,
trans couple. Or,
yeah. Well, I'm not too sure exactly what the website was going to be, or if they were gay or trans, but just on the homosexual level. But he had an issue, or I think it was a woman, so she had an issue with that.
Mhm.
So they sided with her. It was in the state of Colorado, which Colorado, if I'm correct, because they had some issue like that before, and it went against that owner or whatever. So she took it to Supreme Court to flip that. So
Yeah, it's like I would not want a person who did not want me as a customer to do anything for me. So I'm kind of it's like the wedding cake situation. You want somebody who doesn't want to work for you making your wedding cake?
yeah.
You know
And
what I
you know
mean?
what? And that was out of Colorado. That's what it was, the wedding cake. But I know this is now the website designer. But go ahead.
I mean, I know that she is upset that because of her sexual preference,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't want to work with her. I can get that. But I would not want that person to I wouldn't want that person to do my cake. I'm sorry.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would go to the next company. I would go to the next bakery,
Right. Right.
or the next website or wherever.
Right.
How are they going to do a good
Because
job for you if they don't want to do a good job for you?
right, and then I would personally, I would have spread the word if I'm
Yeah.
if that person or whatever, because you're a business. Your job is to make money,
Right.
and if you don't want to make this money, yeah, I'm gonna put you out there on blast.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna put you on blast, but if you don't want to make this money, I'm gonna make sure that everybody knows this is the reason why.
Yeah.
You
So,
know,
I mean, she might have been angry enough to try to put them out of business. I don't know what her goal was, or just to make sure that everybody knew that they were bigoted like that.
mm-hmm.
It depends on her motivation.
Okay,
But say if it was because we were black, like they used to,
of course.
so or it still do sometimes.
That's
Do you
a
want
plus.
to go somewhere like I don't know, Oklahoma or something, and go to like a restaurant and they don't want black folks in there?
Right,
I
right.
wouldn't I wouldn't
I,
I
I'm
wouldn't go in that
I'm not
restaurant.
I'm not gonna go in there without a doubt. But then yet, still on the fact that this restaurant is this way,
Mhm.
I'm gonna put you on blast.
Yeah. You
You know what I'm
definitely can do
saying?
that.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna put you on blast. I'm gonna bring the truth out there, because if I would not want any other minority to go through what I went through at this restaurant, whoever it is, or in their case, the web designer or whoever it is.
Mhm.
I would not want them to endure that. So since I don't want them to endure that, then so yeah, I'm gonna put it out there,
Yeah,
and
that's
then we can
valid.
go back and forth, and then if that restaurant owner, website designer wants to come at me through the laws and so forth, I'm just gonna throw that proof out there and let's see where the chips fall.
Yeah. And you know what? Doing it that way will hurt like a big chain.
Mm-hmm.
Like what is that, Cracker Barrel?
Mm-hmm.
They had a reputation of
Being a certain way.
right, exactly. And it did hurt their business, and it hurt their reputation, and
Right.
it lost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, doing it that way can make a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, okay, the killing of the student loan debts, they're making starting next month, if I'm correct.
Mhm.
They're making folks pay back these student loan debts. You know, you have these folks saying, "Well, it wasn't fair to me. I had to struggle and pay all the stuff off." You know, but everybody has a different situation.
Mhm.
You know, and then you have to make a choice sometimes. You know, just like folks would have to make a choice with certain medicines. They may be able to get it, maybe not able to get it, and if they had to make a choice between medicines and groceries and that type of deal, you have people who go through school, or maybe they only went through school partially, but they still had these loan debts. And they might, I mean, I don't believe, because you have these people out here believing that people just screwing off and of their responsibilities and so forth. I don't
Mhm.
believe that was every person that owes student loan, you
Mhm.
know. And of course, the numbers could get astronomical and so forth. So I don't believe that that's what it is, but different things come up in your life which you have to make a choice. Do I pay this or do I pay this? And the more that you wait, the higher that loan debt gets, and you got to pay attention the rest of your life. Well,
Yeah.
not to those who paid off all their student loans, blessings to you, but still, you got this part of the population that can't do it for whatever reason. I don't think that they're, and I could be wrong. I don't believe that they're lazy and all that. It's just the fact that you got to make a choice in life, and you got to live with that choice.
Right.
you
Right.
know
Yeah.
so, and then sitting saying that, you still have a group of a population that has something on their back, where, and this is what Joe Biden was trying to do, take some of that off their back so they can live and put more into the economy to push and drive things. But now, because the Supreme Court didn't want that, all that's falling apart. So
Mhm.
even though I know I didn't got on my soapbox, I just want to know your thoughts on it, bro.
Well, I think that it was definitely a political decision, that they're trying to stop them from getting the debt relief.
Right.
Because I mean, if you put all of those students uh, under that much debt, they're gonna have to keep working. You got to keep working to pay off all of that money. You know what
Right.
I mean? And I think they know that there's not enough housing. There's not enough opportunity.
And
Uh,
that's the thing, because that student loan, it can go on your credit and so forth, and
mhm.
that will mess you up with housing. You might be eligible for a pretty good job, but because they look and they see your credit and they see that that's on there, then they done kicked you out of the running for maybe a job that you could have gotten.
Right, right.
Which I don't see that being fair, because if that person may have gotten that job, maybe they would have paid off the student loan.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a debt prison. You know what I
Yes.
mean? They keep a lot of people in debt prison, and and it works towards like the advantage of banks. It works towards the advantage of a lot of companies who don't want people to quit their jobs after they get a little experience and move somewhere else, because now they know what they're doing. It keeps people kind of stable, because I mean, you have to keep working. You don't have the opportunity to take a risk to move. You know, and yeah, it's definitely by design. And I think that the Supreme Court, in that way, is acting in a political way.
Right.
You know what I mean? To try to, you know, keep
Right.
people in that situation.
And it's supposed to be the judgments by the laws, not by political policy.
Hmm.
Right. I agree with you.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think the high cost of school is designed that way, because I mean, just 30 years ago, people were paying just a couple. You can do a summer job and pay for college. You know what I mean? My mother, she went to UIC and got her master's degree for like $2,000. You know, and inflation I'm sorry, but it don't rise that fast.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So them making school so expensive is definitely a kind of debt prison that they're trying to keep
Right.
people in.
I agree. I agree. Now, excuse me. You know, as I said before, we were speaking about the thought process that some people have in saying that a push for students should go towards the HBCUs instead of some of these standard universities, since hey, they don't want us in there anyway. All right. Saying that and being that, do you believe that some of these universities should get extra funding from the government? Because you might, and I think a lot of people will do it. You know, you're going to get these influx of people. You're going to need a place for them to stay and so forth. I mean, don't get me wrong. You probably have some huge campuses, but you know, a lot of them probably get full pretty quick. So now that you may get this influx from, let's just say, you may have an extra, let me just throw a number out there, 4,000 people that would have went to, let's just say, between New York University and Penn State. Now they're going to go to Howard. Where are you going to put these people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So do you think that the government itself, just as a throwback against this decision, should they start funding HBCUs a lot more? What do you think?
Yeah. I think that is definitely a good way to go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you want to go to a HBC,
Mm-hmm.
I think that they should allot a amount of money to go to specific universities and colleges that promote that. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that um, they have the money to do things like that, but they don't want to. I don't know. They don't want to pull money from where I would pull money from. That's for sure. Because if you take a little money from the military budget and start throwing it at the colleges, that's where all your money is right there. That's all the
Okay.
money that you need. You know, and I'm sure that a lot of like African Americans, they would opt to go to a HBC, but a lot of them, they would go to state colleges.
Right. And then that's what I'm saying. Since they want to do this, then maybe, you know, that push that some people have been talking about through social media, maybe that should go through on that level, going to these HBCUs and so forth, you know, just so that you know these students are getting a quality education. And I'm not only just saying African Americans, because I know with some HBCUs you have a lot of Hispanic people and so forth.
Mhm.
You know, so you know, as a whole, maybe it's that time to push that and push this money towards these other colleges. Because I mean, if you really look at it, you know, we've always been fed. You remember, we always been fed that we are the minority while they're the majority. Back then, okay.
Mhm.
Now the way that the population is going, a lot of your minorities are the majority, and it's time to start proving that.
Well, definitely put together we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you add all the minorities together, we are definitely the majority in the country. Um, and um, they can definitely acknowledge that by doing a lot more for the HBCs. But I don't know. When it comes to education,
Right.
it's so many directions that you can go.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start like getting judges to rule that this money should be going here and that money should be going there, that's going to be kind of tricky. That's going to be a little tricky. Um, but I think like the overall pot of money should get be increased.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that. I think you would have a lot of fights if you were to like say, okay, this group of colleges will get more money or more than everybody else.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah, you're going to have some pushback. You're going to have some blowback. But in many ways, some of those bigger universities already get a big stint of money. I mean, not only from the government, but they also get a big stint of money through TV contracts and so forth, through, their
Alumni.
football games, baseball games, basketball games, and all that.
Hmm.
So saying that and being that, they already got a big piece of chop anyway.
Yeah.
Let's start giving it to some of these smaller guys, since this is what you want to push. You
Hmm.
know, hmm, I lost my thought. Just go ahead, bro.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of value, right?
Yes.
I've known a lot of people who went to like Howard. They went to Morehouse, and and they get a different kind of education. That's for sure. You know, the surrounding of that area that that they go to, the environment promotes confidence uh, about yourself, and seeing people who are higher educated, that looks like you. It makes you feel a certain kind of way, you know.
Well, also, what's your thought on this too? Now, I do remember that they were speaking about that the affirmative action would not be, it would not end within the military. You know, they will still do that within, military sections of the university and all that. So, does that look like fair play as well? Uh,
I don't know how they're doing it in the military.
Not exactly. I don't know either. But that's one thing that none know that they said, and as well, um, it used to be with the legacy students.
Okay,
Those students that they grandmama and their granddaddy put a whole hump of money in the school. Now all of a sudden they can go to school with no problem.
okay, yeah.
Now I think part of that has been stopped, but should that also personally be cut completely off? What is your thoughts with that?
I don't know. That would be a big fight too, because I think the benefit of going to a lot of these, say, Ivy League schools is networking, right? So if your parents are millionaires and or billionaires, and you get to go to school with other people whose parents are billionaires, the contacts you can make at those kind of schools are crazy. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right,
You can make all kinds of. I mean, you probably have a job before you probably a junior. You
right,
know, just waiting on you.
right, right.
So I think it's going to be hard for you to stop colleges from considering like a legacy, because they want those. They want the network to stay in place. They want to keep. They want to cycle all the same groups, all the same families. Because they know they come from wealth, and they're all like in the same situation. I don't agree with it.
But still, this goes to this, as they spoke about that the affirmative action would stop, it would end when our society is being fair. Now, being that, and I understand what you're saying. Now, being that and saying that, these legacy students and all that, that's still not a fair play. I don't care if your granddaddy put $10 million in school.
Mhm.
What are your grades in here that get you in the door? Since that's what they want to go everything off of, what are your grades? If your grades ain't coming up to par, even though granddaddy may have put 10 million, you don't need to be in the door.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I don't really think they actually they actually care about affirmative action or trying to do anything
Well,
with
I,
it.
I know, and their main thing was, well, their main thing, because the whole thing stemmed from, if I'm correct, Harvard University,
Mhm.
where it was a Chinese student, um, or a student from the Far East. I'm gonna say that better. All right, they did not get in because of the affirmative action, and it was a certain quota of students that needed to be in there, and I think that was at Harvard, and that's where the whole thing stems from. Not knowing that, how can I say, a lot of them is, benefiting from it as well. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my understanding was that if you had two students, right? Say
Correct.
one white, one say Native American or African American, they had a similar grade. They had similar test scores, similar grades.
Right.
That
And
at that point,
that's what
at
happened
that
to
point,
this Chinese student. But go ahead.
right at that point, you would take in consideration the environments of which they grew up in and the situations at that point. I don't think it was ever a situation when you would have somebody who was making like B's and C's up against somebody who was making straight A's, and then they would give consideration to the person who was making C's and B's. I don't think that was the deal. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's only equivalent scores.
Mm-hmm.
But I in that case, I would definitely look at other factors. You have to look at other factors.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You can have somebody like you said, Chinese, right?
Correct.
So I know some Chinese, right? They are very smart in certain subjects, maybe math, science, or whatever. But I know also for a fact that a lot of them tell me the way they get taught is they don't have a lot of creativity in the way that they think, right? So you could be very logical and analytic
Right.
with nothing to push it. Nothing, no creativity to push what you know. You're a good worker, and you can problem solve the issues, but to go a little bit further than that is harder. So you have to look at that too. Is this person very assertive, very aggressive? Are they gonna bring money and fame to the school one day?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they got to take that into account too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Now, and just also to let you know and let everybody else know, our usual partner, the boss man might be, he could not make it today. He had a family emergency to come up, but he was just agreeing with you, Tim, with something what you said earlier, that the number one beneficiary of affirmative action is Caucasian women.
Mm.
Just to throw that out there for everybody, just to let everyone know. And once again, as I always say, hit us up on the line or hit us up on Facebook Live.
Now, I had a question for you.
Come on.
So they also, the Supreme Court also reversed Roe versus Wade, the abortion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, personally, I think that they, once again, were wrong, because how can these 6 people, all right, make judgment over, again, half the population? I mean, in population, one half is women. How can you make this judgment? These 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, and to bring it back to the states and allow these states to do some very draconian things, how do they say, if you were from Texas and you knew your neighbor was pregnant, and then she may have came to Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
and then came back and no longer pregnant, you can get her arrested. Bless you, bro. You can get her arrested. And that, to me, that's crazy and that's out of pocket. That's something that should not be there. That not at all. All right. Now, I understand that people have different feelings with abortion. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all understandable. We're all different. But the thing is, some things need to be left to that individual and that higher power.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but these 6 folks here were dead flat wrong. That's my feeling with it.
Yeah.
You know, and again, that's another thing that I feel, and I hope and pray that everybody remembers. You know, from affirmative action to the abortion thing, everything when it's election time, and this is the consequences of you not really paying attention, you know, to the elections and so forth. Because you get these people that they don't want to hear nothing about it. They ain't gonna vote, or they vote, they ain't gonna care who they vote for. They're just throwing it out there just to say that they voted. No, pay attention to who you're voting for.
Right.
See what they're about.
Right.
And then make that wise decision from that point. And that's the thing that we need to do. And I hope that everything reverberates back to these decisions that has hurt a lot of people. Personally.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
So I got a lot of videos sent to me.
All right.
This week.
All right.
I was wondering if you sent me the video of the people who were arguing against drinking and driving. Did you send me that video?
No, sir.
Okay. So in the 80s, they stopped people from drinking and driving, right?
Right.
So they had to pass a lot of laws. It was a lot of argument. People wanted all around the world. This wasn't just in the United States. Around 1980s, they wanted to drink and they wanted to drive. They didn't want nobody to tell them to stop drinking and driving, right? And they had all kinds of groups popping up, and it kind of like the population, like you said, you should take into account what the population wants, right?
Yes.
So the population got all of these lawmakers to make a federal law: no drinking, no driving, right?
Right.
Because that's what the people want.
Yes.
And I kind of relate that to the Second Amendment stuff, right? Most people in the United States, they say, you know what? You should put some kind of limit. You should have some kind of accountability if you own a gun. You should have a license or something. It should be a record. Are you mentally capable of owning a gun? Do you have insurance? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Most people want that. That's common sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can't get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court is not changing that.
Of course they're not. Of course they're not. I agree with you on that, man. Going into that gun situation, how can I say? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my thought together on that one to give you a good and kind of a clear answer. But I do agree on the fact that, you know, you need some of these things, which are some common sense things. So you just can't get, you know, you have these straw buyers, you have stuff of that sort, and you need to stop that, because you want it to be fair of the folks who don't want to own a gun and folks who lawfully, legally do right by, you know, the gun laws and so forth. So some of the things, bringing in more responsibility in my book is a good thing. You know what I mean? Because it may bring that fair and freedom, you know, so that people can have a gun, feel protected and so forth. So that's the hope of that, you know. But we're gonna have to possibly continue the situation. This conversation. You know, online, and definitely do that. Always hit us up. The email address is the triple threat of radio. All one word, the triple threat of radio at gmail.com. Once again, the triple threat of radio at gmail.com. All right. One more thing and so forth. If you are a business and you want to get your business more out there and so forth, hit us up through that email. All right. Hey, let's talk about it. We can start getting that together and get you out there to the people. All right.
Sure.
I am your boy Abdul Rashid, and
I'm Tim Evans. Yep.
This is Elevated Vibes. We'll catch y'all next week. Peace.